Chapter 5 Lotus Temple.
Secrets are enticing because of the promises associated with them. Promises of unknown powers.
Wrangle Gola, Turavania, some years ago. They found stairs on the east side of the structure. They were broad at the bottom, but broader at the top, and they led to a doorway. Parker guided his friends up the ageless stairs, glancing at the angelic marble statues that lined the edges. They stood tall, alert, with deadly-looking pikes held straight at their sides and wings folded against their backs. All of the angel eyes were looking toward the east. Parker and his companions stopped at the top of the stairs. The Lotus structure sat atop an octagon platform, and the tiles that went around the flower-like structure gleamed in the moonlight. The doors across from Parker and his companions appeared to be glass, and as they approached them, they slid aside on a bright lobby lit with inviting light. "Wow," Parker breathed. After a moment's hesitation, Parker and his group stepped into the lobby. There were pictures on the walls of angelic men and women, and the paintings looked like they could have been painted yesterday. They were so fresh and vibrant. Parker looked on the images for a moment, images of the angelic men and women leading people toward light. Then Parker left the lobby first and started along a hallway that seemed to wrap around the outer edge of the temple. Doorways were on the left. Parker wondered how long this temple had been abandoned as he and his companions moved through its ghostly hallways. It was so hard to tell. There was no wear or tear on anything, and half-sphere lights attached to the ceiling glowed with the brilliance of being brand new. "How does a place stay this pristine after so long?" Mr. Callie asked, voicing Parker's question. "Where would the passageway be, do you wonder?" Uala asked. "Oftentimes in temples, the most important rooms are in the highest points," Mr. Callie said, pointing to a beautiful curving stairwell ahead. "Then up we go," Parker said happily, as he shifted his pack on his back. Before long, they were walking down a new curving hallway, looking for the next set of stairs. They hadn't gone far when they saw the first signs of imperfection in the impeccable temple. There was a doorway up ahead. On the right, and laying on the floor outside the doorway, were bits and pieces of detritus. It looked like charred pieces of marble. "What the heck is this?" Uala said. Parker quickened his pace and was soon stepping into the room. It was gutted. It looked like a bomb had gone off inside. The floors and walls were blackened and chipped. The marble looked cracked. There were bits and pieces of rubble strewn about, and in the center of the blast zone was an inky crystal sphere. It looked, to Parker, like a churning storm was captured within the sphere, complete with flickers of lightning. Parker's keen eyes noticed that there were carvings on the skin of the crystal sphere. An angel woman over unknown runes, with her back to a skeleton holding an open scroll. Gaz, Reen, and the others joined Parker in the room, and they stared at the odd, singular sphere. Parker was the first to walk to the sphere. When he reached it, he noticed that it was a little smaller than a throwing ball. He scooped down and picked it up, resting it in his naked palm. On closer inspection, he noticed how beautiful the carvings were. He didn't know if he'd ever seen anything so beautiful. "What is it?" Reen asked, and he glanced at his father, prompting the others to do the same. Mr. Callie shook his head, eyes on the sphere, staring in wonder. I don't know," he whispered. "Some sort of sphere of darkness. I wonder if you should be holding it." Gaz frowned at Parker. "I've been holding it this long and nothing's happened," Parker countered. "He has a point," Uala said. As they went on examining the captivating sphere, there was a sudden groaning sound at their feet. Parker realized what was happening too late. "Oh boy," was all he managed to say as the marble floor beneath him and his friends crumbled and broke and dropped down to the chamber below. There was a soft glowing blue light in the room, and it seemed to be emanating upward as Parker fell. He had the best reflexes of the group and managed to land on all fours as his friends collapsed with the rubble landing on their sides or bottoms. Mr. Callie wasn't so lucky. He tumbled toward the light. Staring, Parker watched the Florian man drop into a pool of light in the middle of the room and vanish from sight. With his heart hammering in his chest, Parker stood straight and stared at the source of light in the middle of the room. He knew, without anyone telling him, exactly what he was looking at. The portal was a stormy, spinning, rectangular pool of water in the middle of the floor. It churned at an even but swift spiral, moving counterclockwise. The great marble pool was surrounded by 4 angel-like statues. not too different from the ones outside, except these were pointing to the pool, from which a haunting, roaring sound emanated. As the seeming water churned, it made the room smell faintly like a swamp. Parker and his companions stared at it as everyone rose to their feet. It seemed impossible, but they'd found everything they'd set out to find. They'd found the oasis, the temple, and now, the passageway. "We've got a problem, Gaz," Parker said in a haunted voice. "What?" Parker's friend asked. Parker nodded to the rectangular pool. "Your dad fell into that." "It's the passageway," Uala said in a whisper, her voice shaking. "To another world," Reen added. "If Dad fell into that," Gaz announced with determination, "we have to go after him. He could be hurt on the other side, or—" He let his words trail off. "You still have that gun?" Parker asked, looking at Reen. The Florian nodded. Everyone made sure their packs were secure. Flashlights were drawn out, and in very short order, Parker and his friends were standing on the edge of the pool, looking in it. The swampy smell was much stronger here, the growling much louder. "You realize we might be killing ourselves by doing this, right?" Uala asked, grimacing. The friends all exchanged glances and then looked determinedly at the portal. "Yeah," Uala sighed. "That's what I thought you'd all say." Parker took the initiative and jumped first. The water didn't feel like water. It felt like mist and wind. Parker felt himself falling, tumbling out of control. He couldn't see anything except streaks of color. There was no concept of up and down, just hurtling. Parker cried out in fear. Then, suddenly, he dropped down through a rectangle in the ceiling of the dark cave. The doorway mirrored the portal within the Lotus temple. Parker grunted as he landed hard on the stone floor of the chamber, and he heard his friends crash down around him. Everyone was groaning. "Well," Uala commented, rubbing her backside, "we're not dead." Parker heard the sound of rushing water near them. He sat up to look, his cat eyes seeing through the darkness. The domed chamber they were in seemed sealed at every point, except for the dark entrance and exit of the angry-looking river that flowed on the far side of the room. Wincing, Parker stood up and noticed Gaz, Reen, and Uala doing the same. Parker heard a voice shouting, "Anyone, please!" "Dad?" Reen said, his voice quivering. They ran toward the edge of the river, in the direction of Mr. Callie's voice, and before they stopped at the edge of the raging water, Parker spotted the Florian man. He was out in the water, clinging to a shard of stone that was spearing out of the current. Though he was holding on for dear life, Parker could see he wasn't going to be able to hold on much longer. His grip was starting to slip. "We have to do something!" Gaz shouted, shining his flashlight on Mr. Callie. "Dad! We're here! We're gonna help!" Parker looked up and down the river's edge. There were some pillars of rock lining it. "Rope!" Parker shouted. "Someone get some rope!" Reen went to Gaz's pack and quickly stripped it of some of the climbing gear they'd brought. They secured the rope to one of the pillars, and Reen held on to the end, looking out into the water with determination. "Let me," Parker said, stepping in front of his friend. "He's my dad!" Reen growled. "Look at me," Parker argued. "I'm bigger than you, stronger and sturdier. Florians are stronger than Kashna. But I'm stronger than you," Parker pointed out. Reen knew it was true. Parker had trained his body more than his friends. He'd always wanted to fit in with their somewhat more athletic prowess. He'd ended up surpassing them. "If this has any hope in working, it's gotta be me who goes out there," Parker pressed. "You know it." Reen stared at Parker for a moment. Then, accepting the truth, he slapped the rope in Parker's hand. Parker turned and looked toward Mr. Callie. Steeling his nerves, he headed out into the water. The current was a little stiffer than he imagined, and the water was freezing. "This is a stupid plan," he thought hopelessly. Still, the most important thing was getting Mr. Callie and getting him to safety, not how dumb his plan was. Parker trudged on, and the water rose to his waist. He was glad he was tall, and he went out a bit further. He couldn't go out much more. He'd lose his equilibrium. Thrusting a hand out toward Mr. Callie, he saw that there was still about a metre between them. "Can you swim to me?" Parker shouted at Gaz and Reen's father, over the roar of water. The Florian man shook his head. He looked so pale and weak, and there was utter terror in his eyes. A sudden crackling noise across the chamber caused Parker to turn and look. His eyes widened when he noticed the sphere from the room in the Lotus temple. It was floating in the air near the portal. Energy was arcing off of it, connecting with seeming strands of lightning that were arcing away from the rectangular portal itself. "What?" It was all Parker was able to say, because a burst of energy exploded out from the sphere and rolled towards Parker's friends. They were tossed into the water, and the pillars of stone were shattered like glass. The current took Parker, it took his friends, and Mr. Callie, and they hurtled toward the dark hole in the wall that led to the unknown. There was no use fighting the current, and the roar of water just grew louder and louder. Then Parker felt himself pitch over the edge of the waterfall, and he was falling again. When he splashed down at the distant bottom, the impact knocked him into oblivion. Thank you for listening. Please like, subscribe, and share with your friends, and there are more episodes on the way.